Okay, good evening, and I'll call to order tonight's meeting. It's the February 17th, 2020 regular meeting of the Haywood County Board of Commissioners, and our first order of business is a Pledge of Allegiance, and after that, I'll ask our I'll ask our chaplain, Reverend Womack, to come forward and give our invocation. So if everyone would please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May we pray. Almighty God, our Father in heaven, the ruler of all the earth, and the one true and living God, we give you praise. We come this evening humbly, asking that you will grant your blessing on this meeting, that your very will may be accomplished here, however imperfectly carried out by flawed individuals, as we confess that we all are. Forgive us the ways in which we fail you and fail one another. And please overcome those impediments in our hearts to your working through us, that we may love you as we ought to and love our neighbors even as ourselves. And on this President's Day, we pray, Father, that we may mimic the best of virtues that we have found in our executive leadership, from the humility of Washington to the perseverance of Lincoln. O Lord, please grant to these your servants the ability to govern us well and wisely to the praise of your glory. Amen.
Hey, thank you, Reverend Womack. I really appreciate you coming tonight. Okay, our next order of business is public hearings, or call to public hearings, and we have none tonight. And so we'll move on to our public comment session. And I have one person who has signed up to speak, and we would ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes. And I have a timer. It's my phone, and when you hear the chirping or the tone, that means your time's up. And if you would just complete your comments at that time. And so our first, I just have one person to sign up tonight, and her name is Diana Gordon. Welcome.
Hello.
Hey.
I'm calling because of a situation that I've been watching for quite a while. I used to live in Avamore Village in Clyde, and across the street is a man that has horses and has not been taking care of them. They look like skin and bones. Since a new law passed that says that animals need to be taken care of, he's moved them to the back of the properties. I walked the road, it has a sign on it, it's an official road, down there and saw them, and they're still skin and bones. I'm concerned about that because animals cannot take care of themselves. The field he had it in the fall was full of Jimson weed. Jimson weed is a poisonous plant. There was no grass at all in there. Since then, he's moved it in with I think there's 2 other horses in the back, and they're also skin and bones. If you don't go check on them, make sure that he didn't give them sweet feed and water, because that'll fatten them up and make them look like they're good. Just go and do it on the hide, because they look awful and they cry because they need food. And that's why I'm here.
And what was the name of the street?
It's directly across the street from Avamore Village Apartments in Clyde.
Can you make note of that?
That's the elderly housing. I used to live there. And I'm going to keep my eye and make sure that something's done, because that's not right.
Okay.
You don't do that to animals.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and Brian's going to get some information from you. And let me say also that we have a new animal services director, and he just started work today, actually. So, in fact, he's back here in the back. So I'll get him right back there. If you would, y'all can maybe leave and talk outside there, and he can.
Thank you very much.
All right, you're welcome. You're welcome. You came at the right time. He did too. Okay. And we do have a new animal services director. So. He just started, like I say, he started the job today, and we're looking forward to him starting to work for us. Would anyone else like to address the board at this time? Seeing no one, I'll close the public comment session, and we'll move to constituent concerns. Does anybody have anything? Tommy, do you have anything? Brandon, do you?
No.
Kirk?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay. Okay. I'm trying to get my timer to stop. It'll probably go off here in a minute, and I'll stop it. Okay, our next will be administrative agency reports, and we have we have Via Health Physical Monitoring Report for December 31st, 2019. We have our Finance Director, Julie Davis, here. That's under Attachment 1. Welcome, Julie.
Good evening. You have the quarterly report. I bring this to you every quarter. They send it to me, and I turn around and report it to you. And if you'll flip to the first page that says Fiscal Monitoring Report, about midway down, it'll tell you the total revenue through December 31st, 2019, the end of the last quarter, $206,818,605. And that is a column it's the third column from the right. And I know this is tiny print on this report. And if you'll go down to the total expenditures, a few rows down from the revenue side, it's $203,030,348 for a net income as of December 31st of $3,788,257. And they have attached additional information, if you'd like to read it, to kind of explain their fund balance and some of their cash reserves that they've been attaching on each of these reports as they've been sending them in.
Any questions? Do you have any questions, Mark? I know you're on that board, aren't you? No, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, then our next agency reports is our 911 fund report from our 911 dispatch director, Chanda Morgan. And welcome, Chanda. And I asked Chanda to come tonight because we had some questions about where people's 911 taxes are spent on their cell phone bill. So I asked Chanda to come and give us a report on that and talk about that. So thank you and welcome.
Good afternoon. I'm just going to explain briefly the 911 fund to help hopefully everyone understand what it is and what it can be used for. So the first one is what creates the 911 fund. Basically, everyone that has an active landline or cell phone bill, they pay a monthly service charge on their bill. The current charge is 70 cents, and this service charge is collected by the phone companies, then sent to the Department of Revenue, which is transferred to the state 911 fund. And the 911 board, North Carolina 911 board, administers the fund and determines the amount of money that the county receives. The board also determines the monthly surcharge. The 911 board must make monthly payments to the primary PSAP, which is the public safety answering point. And the board may reduce, suspend, or terminate the money if a PSAP does not comply. Haywood County should receive this fiscal year $433,942.68, which we receive in monthly payments of $36,161.89. Last year, we spent $296,010.48. In order to receive the funds, the center must be approved by the board as a PSAP. The PSAP must annually submit to the 911 board a copy of its proposed or approved budget. The PSAP must be included in an annual audit, must comply yearly expense report, provide all documentation and copies of invoices and contracts. And the PSAP must have a means for call taken in the event that the primary PSAP is down. In 2015, Haywood County was able to receive a $2.6 million grant from the 911 board to build a new 911 center and replace all of our end-of-life equipment. So the allowable expenses, basically on the telephone side, 911 trunk lines and one administrative line per answering position is approved. Telephone sets used to answer the 911 calls, headsets, monitors, the CPE, keyboards, mouses, the server, all of those are allowed. The furniture includes cabinets, tables, chairs, desks that hold that hold the 911 equipment. If you have anything that's not allowable, it's a percentage. So if you have a radio on that and the phone, you can claim 50%, and 50% has to be paid for out of the general fund. Software is the CAD system, it's allowed. GIS software used to create and display the base map showing center lines, GIS layers, the voice logging recorder, and the MIS software reporting for the 911 phone system, which is the telephone reporting where we get all of our stats from. Law enforcement, fire, and medical call-taking protocols are included, and so is QA, quality assurance software. Hardware that's allowed is the servers used for the telephone, the CAD, the recorder, GIS, the workstations. UPS and generators are also allowed, but like I say, if it's for the 911 center and another part of the building, it's a percentage of what they will approve. And then all monitors used within the PSAP for call taking is approved, but they have a cap on those. They can't exceed $1,500. And then 911 funding is allowed for training, for individual class registration, specifically for 911 call taking. And out-of-state training must be approved by the board. And 911 funds cannot be used for salaries for telecommunicators, supervisors, directors, technicians, etc. And radio, any radio equipment, repeaters, antennas, towers, the building, none of that's allowed. Any questions?
Anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I was kind of wondering, if you don't spend the money, where does it go?
It stays in fund balance, and then several years ago, I think it was in 2015, they actually allowed us to buy items that usually you can't buy. I think we could spend 50% of that fund balance. And it was 2015 or 14, which is what we bought the CAD system with years ago for all the PSAPs to be tied to. And then the board is actually keeping some of that money for projects like the EZNet, the GIS, the EZNet that we're all going to statewide. It's basically a phone system, a network, so that if our center went down, we could go to the neighboring county, log into their equipment, start answering our 911 calls there.
So I guess with the radio tower project that we've got going on with the updating the 911 communications, would that hardware, would that qualify under those funds?
It will not the radio equipment will not.
That's a shame.
It is. It's basically anything that's call taking related is what they will allow. So anything that helps you answer the phone and figure out where the callers are.
I want to make sure I heard you right too, Shannon. You said that it's 70 cents per
Correct.
bill, but then we send that in, and then they only give us a percentage of that. Is that right?
They do on the percentage of, basically they use a funding formula that's what's left in your fund balance as to what you can carry over, and then each year they determine what they will give the county.
The extra money, do they keep that extra money?
They
or-
do, which is like the grant that we received. Some of that funds come from grant fund.
Okay.
They offer grants or any statewide projects they're working
Okay, that
on.
makes sense. I just thought if we've got so many residents in Haywood County and they're each paying whatever they're paying, we should get that back. But I understand the grant part of it, whether you like it or not.
Anybody have any other questions? Jan, I was wondering, who gives the 911 board permission? Who makes that up? Is that the General Assembly? Do you know?
I honestly don't know. I would have
Okay.
to look that up.
So if we wanted to make changes to what we could use it for, we could maybe talk to our state legislators,
Correct.
because it's a state board that does that.
It is a state board.
Okay. And then what would you like for us to be able, what is a need that makes sense that we maybe could spend the money on?
Radios.
Radios? Okay.
Radios is definitely a big need, and salaries, honestly. I mean,
Salaries, yeah. Okay. But the radios, those were the handheld?
anything
say-
from the handheld to the repeaters to the tower,
Okay, so radio equipment.
radio equipment.
Yeah.
On your mountaintops, basically.
Right, right. So we can't use that right now.
Correct, not for any radios.
Right, okay. Okay. Anybody got any questions? All right, well, thanks, Shannon, for coming
Thank
and
you.
doing that for us. That was really informative. Okay, our next order of business is our discussion adjustment to agenda, and I have none. Does anyone have an adjustment to the agenda or discussion? Okay, the next order of business will be our consent agenda, and I'll read through these. The first is to request approval of the February 3rd, 2020 regular meeting minutes. The second is the request approval of fireworks display for Chestnut Ridge Event Center on February 29th, 2020, April 4th, 2020, and May 23rd, 2020. That's under attachment 3. Next is to request approval to purchase communication and emergency response equipment for 9 new sheriff's office vehicles in the amount of $76,101.87 to be paid from budgeted funds for this fiscal year. That's under attachment 4. Next is to request approval to accept a $90,000 grant from the Haywood Healthcare Foundation for the purchase of 4 portable ventilators and 5 infusion pumps for the Emergency Services Department, and that's under attachment 5. Number 5 is to request approval of audit services contract for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2020 with Gould Killian CPA Group, PA, requesting contract renewal for 4th year with no increase in fee for this 4th year. That's under attachment 6. Next, number 6 is request approval of the budget amendment from the general fund, $24,377 additional grant revenue expansion funds allowed to cover a new JCPC program with payment going through the county to be paid to Mountain Mediation Services Teen Court Restorative Options Program, and that's under attachment 7. Okay, does anyone have any questions on the consent agenda? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion we approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, anyone opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, next order of business is our regular agenda, and we'll move to the request approval of a resolution recognizing Beverly Elliott for her 15 years of service to the 11th Congressional District Office in Haywood County, North Carolina. And so I have Beverly here tonight. And Beverly, if you would come up to the podium, and while you're coming up, I'll read this. This is a resolution honoring Beverly Elliott for 15 years of service to the 11th Congressional District Office in Haywood County, North Carolina. Whereas in the year 2000, Beverly Elliott began her career as a field representative for the 11th Congressional District Office in Haywood County, North Carolina. And whereas Beverly Elliott served as a field representative for Congressman Charles Taylor during the years 2000 through 2007, and whereas Beverly Elliott served as a field representative for Congressman Mark Meadows during the years 2013 through 2019, and whereas Beverly Elliott's service and dedication to the 11th Congressional Office in Haywood County, North Carolina for her 15 years of service are hereby recognized and commended. Now therefore be it resolved that the Haywood County Board of Commissioners recognizes and thanks Beverly Elliott for her dedicated service to the 11th Congressional District in Haywood County, North Carolina, adopted this 17th day of February 2020. And so I'll entertain a motion we approve the resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. And if you would just hang on there just a second. I'm going to present you.
I just want to say thank you very much. Thank you very much for recognizing me. But it's been an honor to serve Haywood County in particular. This is our home, and we're invested in the community, and I just appreciate this recognition. Thank you so much for what you all do.
Okay. Well, thank you, Beverly. And Beverly, I just want to say I appreciate your service because we I know I'm going to miss you because whenever I have a call or I need to call someone that I need some help with federal issues, you've always been there. And I know you call me when you need help on the local level. And it's been great to have you representing Charles Taylor and Mr. Meadows. And hopefully they'll be able to find someone. It's going to be hard to fill your shoes, but we appreciate all your service. All right, thank you again. You want to say something? Okay, our next order of business is to request approval of a resolution of the County of Haywood authorizing the purchase of up to 8 Zoll Z-Vent portable ventilators from Zoll Medical Corporation for the Emergency Services Department per exception to competitive bidding requirements. Emergency Services Deputy Director Travis Donaldson, and that's under Attachment 9. Welcome, Travis.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Resolution of Haywood County authorizing the purchase of up to 8 Zoll Z-Vent portable ventilators from Zoll Medical Corporation per exception to competitive bidding requirements. Whereas North Carolina General Statute 143-129 details the procedures for letting of public contracts, and whereas North Carolina General Statute 143-129E6 allows an exception to the bidding process when purchasing apparatus, supplies, materials, or equipment when standardization or compatibility is the overriding consideration. That section requires the governing board of a political subdivision of the state to approve the purchase prior to the award of the contract. And whereas the Haywood County Emergency Services Department is seeking to improve the care that they provide to our patients by adding the requested 8 ventilators, it will allow Haywood County Emergency Services Department to transport patients who need BiPAP, bi-level positive airway pressure ventilation. After researching and considering compatibility issues, ease of use, technology, and the ability to extract patient data points from the ventilators and tie it into our current Zoll proprietary data analysis system, it was determined that Zoll Z-Vent portable ventilators were the best choice. Zoll Medical Corporation is the sole manufacturer and source of the Z-Vent portable ventilators for the pre-hospital field. And whereas the Zoll brand automatic external defibrillators and cardiac monitors used by Haywood County Emergency Services Department, the fire departments, and law enforcement has established compatibility and cost savings to other agencies across the county. And whereas the Haywood County Emergency Services Department has a need to purchase 8 Zoll Z-Vent portable ventilators, it has been determined that Zoll Medical Corporation is the sole manufacturer and source for the compatible functions with the current cardiac equipment. And whereas half of the funding, $63,075.24, will be provided from a portion of a Haywood County Healthcare Foundation grant, and the remaining half of funding, $63,075.24, will be from funds received by the Emergency Services Department from the Ross Trust Fund. And now, therefore, be it resolved that Haywood County Board of Commissioners in a regular meeting on February 17th, 2020, hereby authorizes Haywood County to purchase 8 Zoll Z-Vent portable ventilators from Zoll Medical Corporation as permitted under North Carolina General Statute 143-129E6.
Okay, I guess, can I have a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all right. Now then, is there any discussion about it? Anybody? This is paid for by a grant and from, well, actually, I guess 2 grants in a way. So. Okay, all those, any other discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Okay, then we have a budget approval, or to request approval of budget amendment for $126,151, which is appropriation of a portion of the Haywood Healthcare Foundation grant and an appropriation of fund balance assigned from the Ross Trust donation to Emergency Services Department to cover the cost of ventilators approved in the above resolution. Julie, I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah, I moved, didn't I? The total of this is $126,151, and $63,075, about half of this is being paid from the Haywood Healthcare Foundation's $90,000 grant that you just approved a few minutes ago, and the other is an appropriation of fund balance, and it's a portion of the Ross Trust funds that were designated for EMS for the other $63,076.
Okay, and then can we say what the Ross Trust Fund, what that was? Does anybody, you know, Frank? Or
What do you mean what it
the Ross
was?
Trust Fund
Yeah.
was?
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Lawrence Ross left some monies to Haywood County, different departments in Haywood County, and this money went to EMS. He left some money in his will. So I guess we're utilizing those monies to make this purchase.
We've used them for several different things, I think.
We certainly
So,
have.
He was very generous.
Yeah, that's what do you know his background? Any, or?
Well, no, I don't know much. I represented two of the entities that received funds from him. There was,
Several people?
oh yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Let's just say it wasn't a smooth transition. Let's just
I'll
put it
bet.
that way.
Okay. Well, we appreciate Mr. Ross and what
We
he
certainly
did.
do.
That's what I was wanting to get out, was this fellow
Yes.
donated, and it's saving taxpayers money, and that's pretty remarkable.
It certainly was.
Okay. Okay, is any questions on the budget amendment? I'll entertain a motion to approve the budget amendment.
So moved.
Okay, $126,151. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, all those indicate by saying aye. Aye. Okay, anyone opposed? Okay, it's unanimous.
Thank
Thank
you.
y'all. And this will go to good use. Now, can I just ask the ventilators, what do they do specifically, Travis? I guess that would probably be a good question.
They're mechanical ventilators. If we're transporting a patient that has to be intubated or has to have assisted ventilations, instead of having to do those by hand with uncalculated movements and volumes of air, these machines actually will breathe and ventilate these patients mechanically and automated.
It gives a proper,
Correct.
it's not going to get distracted or anything.
It's a higher quality of care for the residents of Haywood County. It's a big deal, and I would like to recognize and thank the Haywood County Healthcare Foundation for their donation and through the grant, as well as Lawrence Ross for the trust that he did leave, that we used some funding for that. I'd also like to thank Captain Nathan Murray and Paramedic Mike Street for their assistance with writing the grant and taking care of all the technical details for it.
Okay. And so we don't have this equipment right now, but now we do. Is that kind of?
The equipment we can acquire fairly shortly. There'll be quite a bit of training that we do to bring it online and make sure everybody understands how to properly use it. So hopefully by summertime, we'll be having these out in the field and be taking care of patients with them.
Okay.
What's
Do we
the,
have,
oh, go ahead.
do we have one of those now? Is that right?
No, this is a completely new addition. It's, we're replacing a piece of equipment and upgrading, plus adding a bunch of additional capabilities that this machine offers.
I understand this is something that we've needed for some time, so it's good to see that
Yep.
we're getting it. So.
Yep.
I noticed in your bid sheet where the actual portion that goes to the patient, it's disposable, but that central unit, do you know what the life expectancy or how long do you think service life is on those units?
Most typical healthcare products, FDA puts 7-year lifespan, but lifespans are judged by the FDA for particular products. But on average, if you look at most products used in the healthcare industry, 7 years, and you can get longer out of them. That's just the recommended.
Those get
replacement.
calibrated and inspected and
Yes.
validated on a regular basis?
Yep. As a part of this purchase, we're doing an annual preventive maintenance contract as well as extended warranties on these pieces of equipment.
Any other questions? Just really appreciate it. Appreciate y'all being proactive and getting this equipment for our citizens. This would be great.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
I would say on that, the Haywood Healthcare Foundation, those monies that come from that foundation were monies received from the sale of the hospital. So,
And that's another good. That was we initially got around 8 million, right? And then we should have up to 20 million when it's all said and done, or thereabouts, Julie? Is it? Yeah. And when will we have that, you think, in full? I know it took a while, but wasn't it by 2022-ish or something like that?
Well, I think by 2020.
That's what I
In
thought.
July, it's supposed to, our 6 years will be up. Isn't that
Okay.
right, Kirk?
Yeah, supposed to be.
Supposed to be, yeah.
We'll see.
Well, I mean, it will. The money's there. There's just some contingencies that are still out there that when the federal government has the right to go after you, then sometimes the statute of limitations can kind of get extended. So there's some issues still left out there. We don't anticipate any major problems or issues, but I just know that it may not all get resolved this year. We hope it.
Are these monies that's being laid out, is that return on investment? Is that money invested? Or
Well,
is it actual?
It was not the money was not previously invested, and then we got permission to invest it in certain ways, so that it is making, there is interest on the money that's not going to the Healthcare Foundation yet, they haven't received yet. Of course, they invest that money at that point in time, but what board are we on? What's that called? What board are we on? The Haywood? No, we're not. This is the Haywood Healthcare Foundation. We're on the Haywood. Well, that's what it used to be. Anyway, they've got so many Haywood Hospital somethings but we're on the one that just takes care of to make sure that the money that has been received from the sale of the hospital is passed through to the county. So there's still some funds that are held up pursuant to the agreement with Duke to be held back for potential lawsuits and potential claims. And so we're waiting for that period to pass. However, some of those are with the federal government. And when you have an issue with the federal government, sometimes it may not just be set in stone the time that it ends. So
They may want to use that money and get some return on its investment, I guess.
yeah. So anyway, I think we're getting it resolved.
The beauty of that is when we get all those monies, which will be close to $20 million, and I think there was less lawsuits than we thought maybe to start with.
Right.
And so once that money is all comes to the county from the sale of the hospital, it's in a trust, and the interest from that trust is what these grants are doing. So we're not supposed to ever touch the principal, $20 million, but all that interest that we get every year, that money's used for grants and programs. I know we've used it for opioid. What all have we used it for, Julie? You look like you're about to say something.
Well, no, we have used it for some of the opioid problems, but they gave out a number of grants this year. Of course, EMS just got that one, but there were some other smaller projects within the county all the way throughout. Clyde School got some money for a grant. There's some other programs that got some of the grant money. This past year was the first year of that grant money being available. We're getting ready to start our second year of grant funding.
Yeah. Okay, so the board, we were, when the hospital sold in 2014 is we set this up, our prior boards did, instead of just spending the money, we put it in a trust, and so that can be used for health care for the county residents. And it perpetuates, so it's a great program that we've got from the sale of our hospital. So I know, I won't go into all that, but it's just, it really helps our health care situation in the county for a lot of different things. So thanks for pointing that out, Kirk. I forgot about that. Okay, our next item of the regular agenda is to request renewal of the First Tryon Advisors Financial Services Agreement and approval to work with the county on the latest general obligation bond refunding, Series 2008, public school bond to be refunded as a Series 2020 refunding. We have our Finance Director, Julie Davis, to talk about that. Go ahead, Julie.
Yes, the county has 3 bonds. We got one in '04, one in '06, and one in '08. The 2 have been refunded already or refinanced. You might want to call it refinanced. The 2008 bonds have just recently been eligible to refund, so we're going to jump on that and see if we can get a little bit lower rate for the remaining 7 years on this bond. And in order to do that, we engage a financial analyst company, and they do a lot of the negotiating with the banks for us. And what I'm bringing to you is an agreement here for that agreement. Now, the agreement for the financial analysts, as well as any bond attorneys and anything else that we have to do in order to complete this transaction, are all going to be rolled into the refunding, so there'll be no net cost to the county. We'll probably borrow just a little bit more than what the bond payoff is so that we can cover these expenses, and by the time it's refinanced, our debt should decrease between about $24,000 and $30,000 a year. This is not as large a savings as the prior refundings, but it's still enough to make it worthwhile.
Anybody have any questions? I do appreciate you staying proactive and looking into that, Julie. I know when we redid I'll say this too, when we redid the election board and the recreation department, which is not there, and the veterans office is there now, and Maple Leaf Respite Care is in that building above the senior resources building, we were able to do a refunding like this and make the mortgage payment for that remodel of that building.
We did. We borrowed
so,
enough money to cover an extra building loan. We certainly did.
Yeah.
And
so
still lowered our debt service.
Yeah, that's true. So Julie stays on top of that, and we appreciate it. And it just, we didn't have to use any tax money to make that payment. We did it from the savings from doing the refund.
Exactly, that was a nice one.
Yeah, it was. And it's really, when we say refunding in government speak, that's in private, I guess, it's refinancing is what we're doing. But we're not extending the loan any. We're keeping the loan amount the same, I believe.
We are keeping the term the same. In fact, there's only 7 years left on this loan, so the new loan will be no longer than 7 years.
Right. We don't really spread it out. We just have the same amount of years to pay off. So that's another good thing. So it's just a lower payment we'll be making, and $24,000 in savings. So okay. Does anybody have any other questions on that? Okay. So I'll entertain a motion that am I requesting the renewal of the First Tryon Investors Financial Services Agreement and approval to work with the county on the latest general obligation bond refunding series 2008 public school bond to be refunded as a series 2020 refunding. So I'll entertain a motion. We approve that, right?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Another discussion. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Okay, is that unanimous?
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Thanks for staying on top of that. Okay, our next item on the regular agenda is to request approval of the January 2020 refunds, releases, amendments, and discoveries. And we have, Judy's out sick tonight, and we have Stephanie Parkins here representing the tax administrator. We have our tax administrator here to talk about this. I'm sorry. Sorry, Stephanie.
That's okay. That's okay.
Get late.
Good evening. I'm here to request the approval of the January 2020 refunds, releases, amendments, and discoveries.
That was pretty typical, I guess.
Yes.
Questions on that? That's a separate attachment, I think. Mm-hmm. And now I'll entertain a motion. We approve the refunds, releases, amendments, and discoveries for January 2020.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Next is to request approval of the January 2020 tax collections updates and refunds. We have our tax collector, Greg West, here tonight, and that's under attachment 13. Welcome, Greg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Commissioners. As of January 31st, 2020, our collection percentage is 92.29%. Our payments collected is $37,124,023. As you can look at 2018 payments, that's we've collected a little over $900,000 more at this time of year than we did last year. Our remaining balance for 2019 real property is $3,093,684.50. Our levy increased in 2019 to $40,113,000, which was an increase of about $522,000. So we had a little bit more to collect than last year, and we seem to be on track to be doing that. As far as the refunds go, it's business as usual. We had refunds in the amount of $932.53, excuse me. I'd like to request approval of the collections for January 31st, 2020. Answer any questions.
Anyone have any questions for Greg? I will note that that's the highest percentage that I see.
It is.
I
Yes.
appreciate it.
We've had a good January. February is a little bit slower than January, but we are on track to have another higher percentage than before. I'd also like to mention that, we will be advertising in the paper March 25th. The taxpayers will have up until March 20th to pay without having their name in the paper. That's under North Carolina General Statute 105-369. I'd like to say we have several people on payment plans, which we certainly appreciate their efforts, but however, they're still delinquent. Their name would still go in the paper even though they are current on their payment plans. And one other reminder is if you're 65 years and older and you can meet the requirements 31,000 and under and you're a permanent resident, you should take advantage of that and sign up for the senior citizen exemption. You have until June 1st to get that paperwork into the assessor's office and receive a sizable deduction in your taxes. This really helps the elderly population. It's a great program.
Greg, can I get that form online?
I don't think the form is online, but we have it available in
come
our
in and get
office
it.
and in the assessor's office as well.
Okay.
And just a phone call, I'll be glad to fax you one or email you one, whatever, can help that way.
Greg, the discount for the veterans, is that only established during the veteran's lifetime, or does it stay with the widow as well once the veteran passes?
I believe the widows would still be able to get that, but I would need to clarify.
I had somebody to ask me about that, and I didn't know the answer. So,
Yeah. We have the disabled veteran as well, and then just disabled. So we'll really have three programs that can help you reduce your taxes.
okay.
Then you have the seniors have until June 1st to apply for.
All three programs can get it by June 1st.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion that we request approval of the January 2020 tax collections, updates, and refunds.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Thank you.
It's unanimous. Thank you, Greg. Okay, the last item of the regular agenda, number 6, is the request approval of a resolution of the formula for funding school current expenses, and that's under attachment 14, and we have our county manager, Bryant Moorhead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just really happy that we're able to come up with an agreement that works for both sides. Let Dr. Nolte say a few words before we
Welcome, Dr. Nolte.
read the resolution.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioners. I want to thank Vice Chairman Jim Harley Francis from our board and Ronnie Clark from attending, as well as our Finance Officer, Angie Gardner, who will be leaving us in a couple weeks. And out there beside her is our new Finance Director, Officer Leanna Moody. Leanna previously served a couple years ago as our Assistant Finance person. So just a little bit of history. And then I'll be glad to entertain any questions before you all look at the resolution. For many years, Haywood County was fairly unique in that the Board of Commissioners and the Board of Education agreed, I imagine some 20 years ago now, to develop a formula of local funding per student. And that has worked really, really well. It places the responsibility for determining how all those funds are spent on the elected board, and it limits the school system in coming back to the commissioners over and over and over during the year as funding changes, as laws change or benefits go up and things like that. So it's worked very well for us. The previous formula ended a little over a year ago, and it basically consisted of averaging the increases over a 3-year period. And we were funded around 2% increase per student for several years. And you would have, as an example, not literal, but just an example, you'd have a 1.9% increase and a 2.1% increase and a 2.3% increase. When you average those together, it's going to be 2.1, and it really always just averaged what had occurred over the past 3 years rather than what was occurring currently in the last year with benefit increases from the state or other changes in fuel cost, salary changes and things like that. So last year, at about this time, we had a relatively new superintendent and a relatively new county manager, and we talked back and forth and talked with our board and with your board, and we decided just to take that average and all agreed to add 1% to it while we studied the formula, and that's literally what we've done over the last year. So we spent a good amount of time, and what we request and is in the resolution that we worked on administratively with the school system and with the county staff, and I know the county attorneys probably looked at the language, was a 2.75 increase. We think that will be a good increase each year per student. We don't get an overall 2.5% increase because our number of students is declining some. So we would get 2.5% if the resolution is passed per student, but we're down a little over 100 students. So the overall increase is actually less. But we think that's fair. The other reason that we would like to go away from the averaging and just look at a percentage per year is it will matter if our enrollment changes. We do expect with housing development on Allens Creek and Plot Creek and in the Bilo area that our enrollment will go up. And instead of asking for a percentage on the large amount, we actually could have, no promises here, but if we regain the 500 or so students that we lost over the last decade, we could even ask for a smaller percentage the next time around. So that's a brief overview. I'll be glad to answer any questions you have before Bryant does his thing with the resolution.
Don't have any questions for Dr. Dalton?
School board has reviewed this, and all the school board members are satisfied this is enough funding to take care of their needs.
Yes, we have talked about this in an open work session a couple times. We have looked at our funding amount. We think 2.5 might be a little low, especially since we have some decline in students. And while we would love to have every penny that we could get, we don't want to ask for more than necessary. So 3 might be a little much at this time. We think 2.75, given what we know today about benefit increases and our population, should keep us in a safe place for the next 3 years.
I was wondering, on the test scores, how did we do last year? Or
we have dropped, and there's consequentially or in correlation, our funding ranking has dropped from the mid-20s down closer to 30 in comparison with local funding with other districts across the state. I'm not saying that money is a direct correlation to performance, because we certainly outperform places that are wealthier overall and have lower percentages of children who live in poverty. We're 20th now out of 115 districts. We were as high as 11th which puts you in the top 10%. If you divide 11 by 115, we spent a couple years at 14th, and we're 20th. We, I think, are on track to move forward, and certainly a little improved funding formula would be beneficial to that.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, should I just ask to approve this then? Okay, so I'll request approval of the resolution on the funding formula for current school, for funding school current expense. I got that out. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Hey, Randy Caput saying aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioners. Have a good evening.
Thank you for coming out tonight. I will say, when we were talking about the funding formula, and I always remember this, Bryant and I were at a county commissioner training session, and we talked about our funding formula and how well it worked, because we had other commissioners in there, and it was talking about how they had literally fights, I think, with their school board, wasn't it? Yeah. And almost like physical fights in a way, that we'd heard some reports from those guys, and we were talking about how well our funding formula worked with our school board. And so there was a fellow that came over, and Bryant said he was going to go home with us so he could find out what we were doing, that they appreciated so well, so that they heard what we were doing and they really appreciated it. But there were some real horror stories, going to court and things like that. So I wanted to mention that our school board and this board, the commissioner board, gets along really well. And this funding formula is a big piece of that. And it really makes things go smoothly. And I remember in 2003, we first heard it from, I believe the commissioner was from Fayetteville, and he said they had started doing that. And Mark Swanger and I guess he was. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So so anyway, our ears perked up when we heard that, and we started doing it. We've done it ever since. It's been great. So anyway, we'll move on. I just wanted to mention that this really does work really well. And I appreciate, Ronnie, you being here, and Jim Hardy, you being here tonight, and along with your ladies. So one of them's leaving and one of them's coming on. So that's good. Okay, good. Okay, so we'll move on to appointments, and I'll turn it over to our county manager, Bryant Moorhead. The first is to request approval of the reappointment of Arthur Dosch to the Adult Care Home Advisory Committee for Long-Term Care. That's under attachment 15. Go ahead, Bryant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We received a note from Larry Reeves, who's our ombudsman, asking for the reappointment of Mr. Dosch to a full 3-year term. According to the email, he's an excellent member and does a great job as an advocate for residents in Haywood County. He's asking for a 3-year appointment.
Okay, and we appreciate Mr. Is it Dosch? Dosch. Okay, we appreciate Mr. Dosch serving on that board. And so I'll entertain a motion that we approve the reappointment of Arthur Dosch to the Adult Care Home Advisory Committee for Long-Term Care.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. And then next is to request approval of appointments of Robert W. Clark and Kimberly Diane Moore to the Haywood County Recreation Advisory Board. Go ahead, Brian.
The first is Robert W. Bob Clark. He's a retired attorney. He is a firm believer in local parks and recreation opportunities. He's, according to his application, he's an active road cyclist, mountain biker, hiker, canoeist, fisher, and gym rat. So he has a strong belief in what physical activity can do for people in Haywood County and wants to help. And then the next one is Kimberly Diane Moore. She's currently the program director of a Small Miracle LLC that provides services for adults and children with intellectual and developmental disabilities. She's lived in Waynesville since 1998 and would love to give back to the community, and has an impact for recreation for staff. And she's connected to the community and thinks she has some strategies to help grow recreation in the county.
Appreciate her too, sir. Is there any questions for these? Okay, if not, I'll entertain a motion that we request approval of the appointments of Robert W. Clark and Kimberly Diane Moore to the Haywood County Recreation Advisory Board.
Second.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Okay, you want to put, okay, that's unanimous. Okay, our next order of business is a closed session, and we have none. And then, does anybody have anything else for the board? Any other business? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion. We adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.